Ethan Marshall sat at the window of his penthouse, listening to the city breathe beneath him. He could feel the heartbeat of New York in the hum of traffic, the distant siren, the pulse of life he could not see. At 26, he had inherited fortune and influence, yet the world remained a photograph he could never hold. His fingers traced the ridge of a marble bust on the sill, and he smiled with a practiced breath, the kind that hid a different truth. He had everything people named successful wanted: polished resume, impeccable manners, invitations to dinners that hummed with polite conversation. But wealth had not taught him how to meet the small, surprising things that arrive without warning. Before we dive into the story, small request from us, please. Subscribe to our channel, like and share. We've put in a lot of effort and time to create this just for you, and we hope you'll enjoy it. Stay connected with us, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Tonight felt different. A laughter, bright and unpolished, threaded through the building from below, carrying the scent of wet pavement and a child's excitement. Ethan tilted his head, listening harder, curiosity nudging at the edges of his caution. He had learned to measure the world in sounds and textures, but some sounds reached past his armor. The laugh sounded like a promise. He had built careful walls, polite routines, ordered days, and professional smiles, but inside his heart something unquiet stirred. He closed his eyes, not to mourn what he could not see, but to invite whatever was coming next. Ethan's life, polished on the outside, was quietly unraveling on the inside. People often assumed that being the son of one of America's most influential philanthropists meant warmth, guidance, and encouragement. But Ethan's reality had always been far from the glowing image the public adored. His father, Richard Marshall, had built an empire of charity, hospitals, and innovation, yet somehow failed to build a bridge to his own son. Richard cared deeply about people in general, but struggled to connect with the boy who needed him the most. Ethan rarely felt seen, even before he lost his sight. He had gone blind at 11 due to a degenerative retinal disease. The doctors tried treatments, trials, and experimental procedures, but nothing stopped the fading light. One afternoon, the world simply dimmed and never returned. Ethan remembered his mother holding his shaking hands, whispering comfort through her own tears. But she passed away a few years later, leaving him with a father who hid grief behind business meetings and public speeches. Ethan grew up learning independence out of necessity, not confidence. He mastered the cane, memorized roots, learned Braille, and trained himself to navigate life with elegance. But deep down, he carried a quiet ache. He had the discipline to continue, but sometimes he wondered what it felt like to be guided, not because he was incapable, but because he deserved comfort too. Despite the fortune he inherited, the void inside him was widening. People adored his father and often expected Ethan to follow the same path. But he wasn't Richard. He didn't want to be a figure on a stage or a name on a building. He simply wanted to experience the world in a way that felt real. Yet every time he tried to reach out to life, it slipped away, as if he were grasping for air. His loneliness wasn't the loud kind. It was quiet, gentle, and persistent, the kind that settled into routine and disguised itself as acceptance. His caretaker, Melanie, visited daily to help with tasks he couldn't comfortably manage alone. But even she kept things strictly professional. Conversations were polite, predictable, and distant. The city outside his penthouse window fascinated him, but it also reminded him of what he couldn't touch. He heard children running through parks, cyclists rushing past, dogs barking with playful joy, and street performers singing with passion. He longed for moments that made life feel spontaneous, things that weren't scheduled, measured or curated to fit his father's expectations. One afternoon, Richard's assistant called with a message that felt more like a command than an invitation. The Marshall Foundation was hosting a grand charity gala in 2 weeks, and Richard expected Ethan to attend and speak. "Your presence means a lot to your father," the assistant said, in a tone that didn't match the words. Ethan sighed softly, feeling the weight of those expectations tighten around his chest. Speaking in crowded rooms, pretending everything was fine, performing a role he never asked for, it drained him. He wondered how many more times he would have to show up for the world while it rarely showed up for him. He leaned back in his leather chair, listening to the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Time moved forward, but he felt stuck between days. He didn't wish for sight out of bitterness. He wished for connection, something to anchor him to life beyond duty and polite applause. But the connection felt like a luxury out of reach. The next morning carried a softness Ethan rarely noticed. The sun warmed his face through the balcony doors, and for once he didn't rush into his usual routine. He wandered to the lobby of his building, with his cane tapping gently against the polished floor. Melanie had the day off, so he moved more slowly, savoring the subtle sounds around him. He heard footsteps, distant chatter, and the rhythmic swirl of the revolving doors. But among all those sounds, one stood out, a tiny, excited humming. Almost like a little melody being invented on the spot. As he stepped outside, Ethan paused. A young girl, maybe 7 or 8, was sitting on the curb with a little backpack shaped like a fox. She was drawing something on the sidewalk with pastel chalks, humming with such carefree joy that Ethan couldn't help but smile. Her voice carried warmth, the kind that made the world feel lighter without asking permission. She noticed him before he could even introduce himself. "Hi," she called out with a burst of enthusiasm that startled him. Ethan laughed softly. "Well, hello there. What are you working on?" "A rainbow," she said proudly. "But you can't see it, right? My mom told me you're blind. That's okay. You can still feel a rainbow." Her words caught him off guard. "Feel a rainbow?" he repeated, surprise mixing with amusement. "Yeah," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Put your hand here." She guided his hand gently toward the chalky pavement. He could feel the powdery residue of layered colors. She moved his hand slowly across the pattern. "See, each stripe feels different because you made a different sound when you touched it." Ethan chuckled. "Did I?" "Yup, you said wow when you touched the yellow one. Didn't even realize he had." Her simple observation warmed him in a way he hadn't felt in years. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she replied. "I live in the building next to yours. Mom says we moved here because new places help you grow." "I think that's true," Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "I think you might be right." She scooted closer, her tiny shoes scraping the pavement. "Do you ever get bored?" "You look like someone who gets bored." His chest tightened, then eased with humor. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but today feels different. Good. Want to go for a walk? I can show you things. You don't have to see them to know they're cool." He hesitated, not out of fear, but out of disbelief that someone so small could open a world he'd long kept closed. "Sure," he finally said, a trace of excitement sneaking into his voice. Lily grabbed his hand with a confidence that surprised him. "Come on, I know where the trees smell like cookies." Ethan laughed, feeling his heart lift unexpectedly. She guided him toward the park a block away, narrating everything with dramatic flair: the shape of the clouds, the way the leaves moved like they were dancing, the dog that looked like a fluffy marshmallow. Every step with Lily felt like discovering a new language of the world, one made of feelings, sounds, scents, and imagination. It felt real, so real that Ethan wondered how he had ever settled for less. As they reached the park, Lily tugged Ethan toward a wooden bench beneath a broad oak tree. The breeze carried the scent of fresh grass and warm pretzels from a nearby stand. Lily swung her legs playfully while Ethan sat beside her, listening to the world come alive in ways he hadn't allowed himself to in years. "Close your eyes," Lily said suddenly, then giggled. "Oh, wait, do you already do? That's funny." Ethan let out a warm laugh. "What should I do then?" "Just listen," she replied softly. He tilted his head, letting her voice guide him. Children were playing tag in the distance, their laughter rising and falling like a melody. Leaves rustled in gentle waves. The fountain's water splashed rhythmically like a calm heartbeat at the center of the park. Birds hopped near their feet, chirping with cheerful persistence. "Do you hear that?" Lily whispered. "Hear what?" Ethan asked, mesmerized by her tone. "The world is saying hello." Ethan felt something shift deep inside him. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was subtle, tender, and overwhelmingly real. He inhaled slowly, as if the entire park were holding his hand. "Lily, I didn't know I missed this." "You didn't miss it," she said confidently. "You just forgot where it was." Her words landed in him like truth wrapped in innocence. He had spent years trying to navigate life through structure and control, not realizing how much beauty slipped past him quietly, waiting to be heard, felt, and experienced. Lily hopped off the bench. "Come on, I want to show you my special place." "Special place?" he repeated, intrigued. She guided him across the grass to a tiny garden bed filled with wildflowers. She placed his hand gently over a cluster of soft petals. "These are my favorites. They look like tiny suns." He brushed his fingers lightly across them. "They feel delicate, but they're strong," she said proudly. "They grow even when no one waters them. They grow because they want to." Ethan's throat tightened. Something about that hit deeper than she could ever understand. "You're very wise for someone your age." She shrugged. "Mom says you see better when you're small. Grown-ups get blurry." He smiled softly, feeling both humbled and awakened. Ali didn't pity him. She didn't see a blind millionaire or a man struggling to belong. She saw a person who needed a friend, someone to show him the colors he thought he lost forever. When they made their way back toward the sidewalk, Ethan felt lighter, as if a door inside him had finally opened. For the first time in years, he wasn't just hearing the world, he was part of it. Lily squeezed his hand gently. "You know, Ethan, you don't have to be alone. Sometimes the world needs you to walk with it." He exhaled a long, relieved breath that carried years of quiet pain. In that moment, he realized this little girl had given him something he didn't know how to ask for: a beginning. In the days that followed, Ethan found himself waking up with a sense of anticipation he hadn't felt since childhood. His mornings no longer drifted into predictable routines. Instead, they carried the soft hope that he might hear Lily's humming outside the building, or the light patter of her quick steps rushing toward him. Each new moment with her stitched something back together inside him. They walked to the park often, their conversations flowing with an ease that surprised him. Lily shared stories about school, her dreams of becoming an artist, and the way she believed colors had personalities. Ethan shared pieces of his past, things he had locked away for years, his mother's gentle voice reading to him at night. The fear he felt when the lights first faded, and the loneliness that followed him, even in crowded rooms. Lily never responded with forced sympathy. Instead, she offered simple truths that felt like warm hands holding the broken parts of his heart. "It's okay to be sad sometimes," she told him once. "But it's not okay to stay sad forever. The world needs people who can feel things." Her words softened something deep in him. He began spending less time in the shadows of expectation and more time following the rhythm of real life. He took slow walks without rushing, listened to street musicians with quiet joy, and even learned the layout of Lily's favorite garden by touch, memorizing the curve of each petal like they were tiny miracles. One afternoon, as they sat beneath the same oak tree, Ethan felt the last pieces of clarity fall into place. "Lily," he said gently, "you've shown me more than I knew was missing." She tilted her head. "Like what?" "Like how the world isn't closed to me," he said, voice warm with emotion. "I just stopped opening the door." Lily smiled, her small fingers brushing against his hand. "Then keep it open. That's how the light gets in. Even if you can't see it, you can feel it." Ethan breathed in deeply, feeling the truth settle inside him. He realized then that strength wasn't something you built alone. Sometimes it came from the most unexpected places: a child's laugh, a hand held without hesitation, a heart unburdened by judgment. He had spent years believing he was navigating life in darkness. But Lily had given him a different kind of sight, the kind that lives in the soul, guiding you toward gratitude, connection, and hope. And with that, Ethan understood his world had never stopped being beautiful. He had simply needed someone small and brave enough to remind him where to look. Ethan and Lily continued to meet in the park, weaving small moments into memories that brightened even the quietest corners of his life. What began as a chance encounter had become a reminder that sometimes the world reaches out in the gentlest ways, inviting us to feel life instead of simply moving through it. Ethan no longer measured his days by what he couldn't see, but by the connections he could feel, deep, genuine, and unexpectedly transformative. Their story reminds us that kindness doesn't need to be grand to be powerful. A simple gesture, a shared laugh, or a little hand guiding you toward a new beginning can change everything. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more emotional, life-changing narratives. Like the video, share it with someone who needs a spark of hope today. Let us know in the comments what moment resonated with you the most. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories to life, reaching people who need a reminder that they're not alone. Sometimes, it's the smallest actions that echo the loudest in the heart.